Welcome back to Bible Talks on WBCM Radio for another deep dive into the book of Genesis.
It's great to be back.
This time we're picking up where we left off,
Okay.
with Jacob still working for his uncle Laban to earn his wives,
Right.
Rachel and Leah.
Yeah, and Genesis 31 starts off with a bunch of tension.
Oh.
Laban's sons are saying that Jacob's getting rich at their expense.
Oh, no.
You can just feel that family drama brewing.
I can only imagine.
And then on top of that, Jacob sees Laban's attitude changing toward him.
Oh, so the good times are over.
Yeah, things aren't so friendly anymore.
So what does Jacob do?
Well, he gets a message from God to go back home.
Yeah.
And that changes everything.
How so?
Well, now it's not just family drama.
Right.
It's about following God's instructions.
Right, okay.
So Jacob has to figure out how to tell his wives, Rachel and Leah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine having to pack up your entire life
Goodness.
and sneaking off in the middle of the night?
I mean, that's no easy feat.
No, and travel back then was no walk in the park.
Not at all, especially with all their animals.
Well, here's the interesting part.
Okay.
Rachel and Leah are totally on board.
Really? They don't even hesitate.
Not at all. They know how Laban's been treating them unfairly.
Oh, so they're not just following their husband blindly.
No, they feel very strongly about this.
I see.
They tell Jacob, do whatever God told you.
They're putting their faith first.
They are.
It sounds like God's guidance is a major theme in this story.
Absolutely.
It's not just a family squabble. It's about following God's plan.
That's right.
All right, so how does Jacob pull off this secret departure?
Well, he gets everyone together, family, livestock, everything, and they just head out.
Okay.
But there's a twist.
What's that?
Rachel steals Laban's household gods.
Wait, why would she do that?
Those were really important to Laban.
In what way?
Some scholars believe that they represented his family line
Oh.
and maybe even his inheritance.
So by stealing them, what's she trying to say?
It could be a way of getting back at Laban.
Oh, I see.
And taking some power for herself.
Wow. Okay.
And then Jacob doesn't even tell Laban he's leaving.
So he sneaks away.
Under the cover of night.
Ooh, sneaky.
Well, Laban eventually notices that everyone's gone.
Oh, yeah.
And he's furious.
I bet.
He takes off after Jacob with his men.
And how long does this chase last?
7 days?
7 days.
Yep,
That's a long time.
it is.
Laban must have really wanted those gods back.
He did, but then God steps in again.
Okay.
He warns Laban in a dream not to hurt Jacob.
Wow. So even though Jacob deceived Laban,
Uh-huh.
God's still protecting him.
It seems that way.
So this sets the stage for a pretty tense meeting
Oh, yeah.
between Jacob and Laban.
Yes.
What happens when they finally come face to face?
It's a pretty intense scene.
Okay.
Laban shows up with all his guys and just starts unloading on Jacob,
Uh-oh.
accusing him of kidnapping his daughters and, stealing from him.
Oh, wow.
And he's really upset that Jacob didn't even say goodbye.
It's like a family feud exploding.
Yeah, and Laban keeps bringing up the dream that God sent him,
Really?
saying, God told me not to hurt you, like he's trying to scare Jacob.
Oh, so he's trying to remind Jacob that he has some power here.
Yeah, exactly.
What does Jacob do?
Jacob defends himself, saying he was afraid Laban would take his daughters from him.
Okay.
And he's adamant that he didn't steal anything.
So he has no idea about the gods.
It seems like he doesn't know what Laban's talking about.
So there's this big misunderstanding happening.
They're not on the same page at all.
Wow.
And Rachel is just keeping quiet about the whole thing.
Oh, man. This is getting complicated.
It is. So Laban decides to take things into his own hands.
How so?
He starts searching all the tents, looking for the missing gods.
He's determined to find them.
He really is.
He must have been pretty frustrated
Oh, yeah.
when he couldn't find anything.
Especially when he gets to Rachel's tent.
That's where the gods are.
Exactly.
So what happens?
Rachel is pretty quick on her feet. She's hidden the gods in her camel's saddle,
Smart.
and she's sitting on it.
So when Laban comes in,
She tells him she can't get up because she's having her period.
oh, wow. She used that to her advantage.
She did.
And it worked.
It did. Laban respected that cultural boundary and didn't search any further.
So Rachel outsmarted him.
She did.
What about Jacob, though?
Oh, he's fuming. He's so angry that Laban would accuse him like that.
After all he's done for Laban.
Right. He reminds Laban of his 20 years of hard work.
Yeah.
All the challenges he faced taking care of Laban's flocks.
He's basically saying, how dare you treat me like this?
Exactly. He really lays into Laban.
And then he brings up God.
He does. He says that his success comes from God's protection.
So he's acknowledging God's role in his life.
He is.
And he's basically telling Laban that he would have nothing without God's help.
Right.
What does Laban say to that?
Well, he kind of backs down a little.
In what way?
He acknowledges that Jacob's family and possessions are his own.
So he's admitting defeat.
In a way, but he's not completely giving up.
What does he do?
He proposes that they make a covenant with each other.
A covenant,
Yes.
like a peace treaty,
Yeah, basically.
so they can avoid any more conflict,
Right.
and to make it official,
They build a monument out of stones.
like a physical reminder of their agreement.
Exactly.
And they give it a name.
They do. What do they call it?
Laban calls it Jagar Sahadutha,
Okay.
and Jacob calls it Gilead, both meaning witness heap.
That's right.
What a powerful image.
It is. They're basically saying God is watching over this agreement,
They also call it Mizpah.
which means watch post.
Okay.
Again, emphasizing that God is a witness to their covenant.
It sounds like they're taking this agreement very seriously.
They are.
So what exactly do they agree to?
They agree that Laban won't try to hurt Jacob,
Okay.
and Jacob won't try to hurt Laban.
Simple but effective.
Right. It's like they're drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And they're calling on God to be a witness to their agreement.
So it's more than just a promise.
Oh, yeah. They're making a commitment before God.
So is this the end of their conflict?
I mean, it definitely brings some closure.
Yeah.
Laban blesses his daughters and grandchildren and goes back home.
It's like a bittersweet ending.
It is.
You know, after all that drama and deception, they managed to find some kind of peace.
Yeah, I think it shows that even when families have conflict,
Mm-hmm.
there can still be a desire for reconciliation.
To kind of smooth things over.
Exactly.
What are some of the main takeaways from this story?
Well, one thing that stands out is God's presence throughout the whole thing.
Even in the messy parts.
Even when things get complicated, God is still guiding Jacob and protecting him.
It's comforting to know that God's always working behind the scenes,
It is.
even when we don't understand what's happening,
And it reminds us to trust in God's plan.
even when it doesn't make sense to us.
Right.
We also see how jealousy and resentment
Yeah.
can really damage relationships.
Especially within families.
It makes you think about how important communication is,
Mm-hmm.
and empathy, and compromise.
For sure.
This story also shows us the consequences of deception.
Jacob and Rachel's choices create a lot of problems.
It makes you realize that our actions have ripple effects,
They do.
and that honesty and integrity are really important.
Absolutely.
But in the midst of all the drama, there's also a message of hope.
How so?
The covenant between Jacob and Laban shows that even broken relationships
Yeah.
can be healed
Right. They're choosing to forgive each other.
and move forward.
It's a reminder that grace can make a big difference.
What's one thing you want our listeners to remember from this chapter?
I think the biggest takeaway is that God is always with us.
No matter what we're going through.
He guides us. He protects us.
And he can even bring good out of difficult situations.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on Genesis 31?
Did anything stand out to you?
What questions do you have?
We'd love to hear your insights in the comments.
And be sure to like and subscribe to Bible Talks on WBCM Radio.
For more deep dives into Scripture.
You can find us on YouTube at www.youtube.com at Radio WBCM.
And on other podcast platforms.
Thanks for joining us today,
We'll see you next time.
and may you find peace and guidance in God's Word.